All right, so here we are again with another G.I. Joe Classified series unboxing, and this is Jason Shockwave Faria. Yes, indeed, it is Shockwave, not Shock Blast. So I guess they straightened out the issue that they had with his code name. So sometime between the original vintage G.I. Joe and Transformers lines and the 2000s when they started to bring the characters back. Hasbro, in their infinite wisdom, had let a lot of the character names trademarks lapse. So they didn't have the rights to even such names as General Hawk or the Baroness. So they were having a really hard time getting a lot of them trademarked again, and they found certain loopholes around some of them. For example, Scarlet became Agent Scarlet, and Stalker became Sergeant Stalker. Some of them they just gave new code names, like General Hawk became General Tomahawk, and Baroness became a completely new character named Chameleon. They got that Baroness thing straightened out quick because she had a figure in 2002. So Roadblock was one that didn't show up until like maybe around like 2003, 2004 or something like that. And they tried a couple of things. One was they came up with a new character called Double Blast, which used the original Roadblock mold, and that was not very well received by fans. And then they basically tried to turn a completely different character, Heavy Duty, into a Roadblock knockoff, and I mean, I guess that was a little better received just because people liked Heavy Duty to begin with. But I like Heavy Duty as Heavy Duty. I like Roadblock as Roadblock. I wouldn't like it if, you know, I don't know, they tried to turn Green Lantern into Batman. You know what I mean? It's just leave the characters as they are. But Shockwave was kind of interesting in that they did manage to get back the rights to the name Shockwave. But of course, there's a Transformers character named Shockwave. And Hasbro, I guess because of the troubles that they'd had with the copyrights and getting them back, they'd had this idea in their head that we can only use the names for one character. We can't have two characters in two different franchises, both with the same name. Now, with a character like Roadblock, obviously the G.I. Joe character Roadblock is one of the more popular G.I. Joe characters. And, a lot of people, if you ask them, I would imagine like you maybe a good chunk of people, if you ask them who their favorite member of the GI Joe team is, might say Roadblock. I'd say at least maybe a good quarter of people might say that. GI Joe. Everybody has a different GI Joe character that they really like. So I doubt anybody though is going to say their favorite Transformer is Roadblock. I mean that's just what I'm saying. Likewise, even though I think they're both kind of niche characters that have more of a cult following, like for example, I'm a big fan of the Decepticon Shockwave. I would say that the Transformers character called Shockwave is probably a little more well known than our boy here, because Shockwave was on the Transformers cartoon and featured heavily in the comic book, and Jason here, he had, a couple of appearances in the comic book and, stood out to me in that, and never appeared in any animation as far as I know, at least not in the version 1 appearance. He did appear in the DEF episode of the Deke animated series, but he was wearing the version 2 uniform. Not as distinct as this one, frankly. It looked to me more like a kind of generic SWAT trooper. Also kind of like what the police looked like in RoboCop, which I don't think is a coincidence. I mean, since this is a cop from Detroit, that would have come hot on the heels of that movie. I got to imagine there was a little bit of RoboCop homage to this character. So not as much as Barricade though. So So yeah, they wound up giving him the code name Shock Blast in that. I didn't really care for that one. They also did a thing where they basically took this character's design and kind of slapped it on a new character that was called like Long Range or something like that. I don't care for that character because it's just a knockoff of Shockwave. If I had have had that figure, I would have just said, "Fuck it, this is Shockwave." Pardon my language. This is not a show for kids. So anyway, here we got this a nice photograph of him there. There's like a train going on behind him. Not a whole lot as far as Easter eggs go, at least in terms of something that I recognize, but there might be something up with that train. I don't know. I would have had him in like a snowy suburban setting because I remember the issue of G.I. Joe Special Missions where like he was heavily featured in it, and even the cover was him crashing through a window to confront a terrorist who was threatening a small boy. But that was a cover that I saw in the stands, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I had to read that comic, and I didn't even know who this character was at the time. I had never seen the figure, and I really, just was kind of intrigued by him. So there's the picture on the side. Nice portrait. Kind of an intense expression. I did look up the last name Faria at one point. Faria. I don't know how you pronounce that, honestly. I just say Faria. Faria. But it could be a Spanish last name or it could be a Portuguese last name. So I like to think of him as being of Portuguese descent because there aren't a lot of Joes that are of Portuguese descent. Not that I know of, anyway. So, and here's the back where you can see a layout of his accessories, and he does have many of them. I've got some thoughts on those accessories. We're going to get into that. They still are putting these little symbols on here, but they're much more subtle now, you notice. I think they're more playing up the QR code, which I still haven't done. He's number 105. They have done 105 of these figures. So, or at least 105 boxes. We'll put it that way. So let's go ahead and open them up. And there's a little cardboard coffin. And there is Shockwave in there. That's what he looks like in there. So, get a closer look at him in a second. Then we got the foot locker, which I'm going to pull that tab back to get it out. 105. Jason Shockwave Faria. Got a little G.I. Joe logo right there. So let's go ahead and open that up. A little baggie. This useless little piece of "please don't sue us" paper. Tear open the baggie. It's sort of like a lot deeper than I would have expected. And then something fell out of it and hit my foot. So, and it's one of these little machine pistols. That's, again, why I don't really like these. I forgot to put the lid back on my paint. I'm going to put the lid back on my paint before I forget that. So, pardon me. Okay, but that's why I don't like these little baggies, because like it's easy to lose stuff in the baggies. So probably the main accessory he's got here is this massive shield. Pretty big. We're gonna come back to that in a second. And then got this baton, which is pretty cool. But honestly, I kind of feel like that this is kind of an 80s kind of baton. And they might still use these in law enforcement, but really more often what I see nowadays is the ASP baton, the collapsible batons. You know what I'm talking about, where it's almost like a toy lightsaber. You just kind of flick it out. And but I kind of figure maybe that might be the sort of thing where it might be difficult to translate it into an action figure weapon. So they go with the more TJ Hooker style nightstick. I'm not going to complain about it too much. It's just a thought that I had. So there's his hat. That's going to be an important accessory. We'll set that aside. Another one of these machine pistols, like a little mini Uzi kind of thing. So, and then we've got some knives. because we got to have knives. He's Shockwave. He's got like a ton of knives. Now, somebody who's more of an expert at weapons could probably tell me, because I'm a little curious about this. You see how like this knife is like square at the tip? Why is that? That just seems odd to me. It seems like the tip broke off of your knife. So, but it might be the sort of thing where like maybe there's a reason for that I just can't figure out. It might be something that's made specifically for cutting wires or something, because you see there's like a little hook there. I'm honestly curious about this. I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm not trying to, be overly critical of it. But to me, it's an odd design of a knife. And I figure it's probably designed that way with some kind of purpose. And I just don't know what it is. So hopefully somebody can tell me that in the comments. And if you can't, hopefully I can find some kind of answer on the internet at some point. I'll try to remember to share it with you folks. So we got 2 ammo clips, which I believe should be identical, just as these 2 machine pistols are identical. So one of the things I really liked about the original Shockwave is that like he had a really cool component of accessories. He had like a really big combat knife. He had a backpack which could store the combat knife, and that was something that I always liked on my G.I. Joe figures, is being able to store the knife on the backpack. I've talked before how I feel about the knives sculpted onto the figures and that sort of thing. So there's what the machine pistol looks like with the ammo clip in there. So he then came with a Desert Eagle pistol and a submachine gun with a silencer and a stock. And this figure pretty much comes with none of that. I mean, I guess you could say that this is like the big knife that he came with. I guess you could say that. This knife is not quite as big, but that's the one that's going to go in his boot. So I was today years old when I figured this out. I can actually unfold this cardboard packaging, and that will make it easier for me to hit the stupid rubber tabs with my X-Acto knife. Figures this out just after Hasbro announces that they're going to get rid of this kind of packaging. So sometimes I'm a pretty smart guy, but I'm usually not that smart. I'm usually just smart enough that I figure things out too late. So there he is out of the packaging, and it looks as if our boy shares a lot of parts with Stalker. Like, this looks to be Stalker's shirt underneath the vest. I'm not going to go through all the trouble of taking off this vest to clarify it, but I'm pretty sure that this is just like a straight up Stalker figure as far as the torso and the arms and probably the legs. So I had this Stalker over here that I opened him up because I needed his machine gun for something. So we're going to go ahead and take him out so that I can look over the body real quick. So yeah, the arms are the same with the little pouches on there and everything, and the legs are not the same. I suspect that these are the legs that are reused from Flint. So, but I'm pretty sure they're different legs from what Stalker has, at least from the knees down. Stalker does not have knee pads, and this guy has knee pads. And the thighs, while similar, I don't believe are the same. Do I have a Dusty handy? Either Dusty will do. It doesn't need to be the tan one. It doesn't need to be the what do you call it? The Tiger Force version. I could have sworn I had one handy around here, but it does not look like I have like big piles of stuff. So it doesn't look like I have one handy at Dusty. But yeah, going back to this guy. This is the one that I custom made. So comparing their legs, he has the same legs that Beachhead had, I think. Yep, with the same boots and everything. So yeah, because I made this out of a Beachhead, and mine, I tried to make him a little more like the original vintage figure. This I kind of feel like they were trying to do like a little bit of an update and make a more realistic version as far as the camo goes. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this one, I just wanted him to look like that figure from the '80s. So he's got that camouflage that to me looks kind of like they were trying to do digital camouflage, but it almost looks kind of like more like birthday party confetti. So I gave him an Uzi with a silencer, and he's got like there's a couple of handguns in here, but they're not Desert Eagles. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any of those at the time. I'm pretty sure I could now. And then I 3D printed him this shield. This is a Donovan Art Collectibles one. I reversed it so I could have him hold the shield with the left hand. So getting back to talking about this figure, the shield he has is bespoke to be held in the right hand. So you have to put it in his right hand if you're going to have him holding the shield. Now, unfortunately, they did not have the foresight to do with this guy what they did with Alley Viper and actually have it where the shield could kind of pivot and you could put it on one arm. Hello, Sean Franklin. Welcome to the show. So he does have what I think is interesting is he has some forearm armor that matches the armor on the shins. So that's a new piece that's based on an old piece. So that's kind of cool. So looking him over like that. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these other accessories. Since we talked about the shield. Oh, one more thing about this shield that I really like is that it's got like see those yellow things on there? Those look to be like flashlights he has built into the shield. So that's pretty useful. So if he's got to go into a darkened area. So here, let's go ahead and put the hat on him and see how well the hat fits on him. And thankfully, it goes on him nice and snug. Nice and snug. Do you have a G.I. Joe movie toy? Oh, I've got several G.I. Joe movie toys from all of the movies, pretty much. I bought like a ton of. I got an empty box right here from one. I bought a ton of these at Ollie's for $5. The GI Joe Origins figures. So I got a lot of Snake Eyes because I use him for custom figures a lot. Like this one was made from movie Snake Eyes. So and my Ninja Force Snake Eyes over here, he was made from a movie Snake Eyes. And this guy that I'm working on is a work in progress. Captain Gridiron I made from the movie Snake Eyes. So he's actually kind of a versatile figure there. You can get a lot of good customs out of that movie Snake Eyes. So let's go ahead and try some of his weapons out in his hands. His hands seem pretty rigid, so I might have a hard time getting this in there. So if I did a G.I. Joe movie or cartoon or comic book or anything like that, I would try to play up some of these characters that we haven't seen in a lot of media before. And one of them would be Shockwave, because Shockwave, like I said, hasn't really been in a whole lot of G.I. Joe media. He hasn't been in any animation that I can recall. He hasn't been in any of those live action movies, certainly. He even hasn't been in the comic book all that much. Like compared to a character like, say, Chuckles or somebody like that, he hasn't gotten a whole lot of use. Not as much as I would like, anyway. So there's how the pistol fits in the holster, the machine pistol. I do wish they had taken a page from the 25th anniversary figure and had that be where his Desert Eagles had gone. If there's one accessory that I would like to have seen this figure come with that he didn't, it would be a Desert Eagle, at least one. But I kind of liked how that one had, even though they were a little undersized, so they could fit in the holsters. I did like how that one had the Desert Eagles as far as that goes. Although it was missing all the other accessories, it didn't have any kind of knife or any kind of submachine gun or anything like that. So All right, let's look over where we're going to put these knives. So I'm not sure which knife goes where. It looks like this knife sheath is square, so I'm guessing that's actually where this one's going to go. And one thing that they did wrong is at least inaccurate to the original figure, is that this knife sheath is actually supposed to be on the inside of the boot. You can see I did that with mine. So I'm going to, since it shouldn't be too hard to do, I'm going to just flip that around like that. So now he's got the knife on the inside of the leg like the original figure had. So that's pretty cool. I'm impressed with how this hat's staying on. Look at that. That's pretty cool. They deserve some props for that. Like, I'm not going to have to worry about that hat falling off randomly. I still might glue it on because I like to glue on the hats, but that's just me. So then we can take this little knife and, well, let's have him hold the knives before we go ahead and put him into the sheath. So there he is holding the smaller, pointier knife. So we'll go ahead and put that in the sheath now. And see, now I've got to go through all this work of taking this knife out of this sheath and putting it in his hand. Just made myself a lot of extra work, folks. And there he is holding the funkier, flat-ended knife. So, which, like I said, I don't really get why it's got a flat end to it. But if anybody has any idea why that is, please let me know in the comments. I would like to know why that is. So, but the machine pistols do fit really nicely into the holsters there, as you can see, and it looks good in its hand. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So let's move back to that shield, and we're going to try to get the shield in his hand, and hopefully that'll look good. And like I said, you got to put the shield in his right hand because that's how it's sculpted. I do wish that they had done this in such a way where we could reverse it if we wanted to. Now, since he's got this forearm guard, I don't want to get that stretched out too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of flip the forearm guard around so it's on the inside of his wrist, and then I should be much more easily be able to clip the shield onto his wrist that way. So there we go. That's what our guy looks like, all geared up. Well, except for one thing. So I forgot about that baton. So it does not look like there's any place on this figure to store the baton, and that is unfortunate. It would have been very simple just to put some kind of loop on here where he could hold this baton. In fact, it's so simple, I bet I can even do it myself. I can probably get one of the I'll probably do one of the ammo the empty ammo pockets from Marauder Studios, and if I cut out the bottom of it and glue it onto this belt, I can probably do it as a sort of thing where like we can have the baton fit onto the belt. Or it could have even been the sort of thing where, like, with the Gridiron Studios shield, they could have put like a little holster for the baton onto the shield. In fact, let me see. Maybe, just maybe, I can squeeze it in between his wrist. And yeah, there we go. So I was able to squeeze it in between his wrist and the shield, so he actually can store it that way. Although I don't think that that was the intention as far as the design goes. So looking over his paint job, this is definitely a darker and less vibrant version of the original figure that we saw back in the late 80s. It's the blue is like just slightly more on the grayish side and slightly darker. And the dark blue is slightly darker, and he's got some black incorporated into the pads on his vest. So there's that. That does give it a little more texture. Maybe it's not black. Maybe it's just more kind of like a dark blue, a darker dark blue. So and his boots are now black, and his gloves look to be black, and he's got fingerless gloves now, which I think is a nice touch. And then he's got these Looks like some little shotgun shells up there, which is weird because he doesn't have a shotgun. But whatever. And he's got lots of little pouches and stuff down to the bottom, so you could probably carry various things in there. It's a cool looking figure. I like it a lot. Uh, I think that the color choices are good. It does, like I said, it seems a little more realistic than the original 1980s figure did. So that's a good thing. And he even does have, although it's a lot more subtle on the original figure, he even does have some yellow worked into that camouflage like the original figure had. It's just kind of little dots in there, but still, it's something that gives it a little bit of texture. Uh, I like the expression on his face. He doesn't look as mean as Beachhead looks. He's got like almost more of a boyish sort of quality to it. Remember, when we read the original file card of Shockwave, we learned that his secondary military specialty was choir. So he's a choir boy. He's I kind of imagine if he was a character that had made it onto the Sunbow cartoon, he probably would have been a guy who would have sang little songs while he was in combat. If you think about Roadblock's rhymes or Big Lob's sportscaster narration that he would do for himself, you can see how that might be something that might fit in as far as a Sunbow version of Shockwave, if such a thing were to happen. So I do remember that the original figure, the balaclava, it seemed a bit thick as far as such things go. This one seems to fit his head a lot more closely. And like I said, the hat fits on there so nicely. I'm really impressed with how snugly that hat fits on there. So that's cool. So absolutely, Shockwave gets a recommend from me. This is a great figure, a great update of one of my favorite figures from the vintage line, which always really like Shockwave. He's one that, like, since he did come out kind of late in the game, I mean, still, like, there was quite a few years of the GI Joe toy line left at that point, so nowhere near the end, but certainly late enough that, like, the Sunbow cartoon had ended, and the the comic book series, while it was still popular and still selling well, was past its peak and starting to be on the wane. And part of that was Hasbro's fault, because what I think really hurt the GI Joe comic book was when they killed off Cobra Commander. And Larry Hama tried to warn them against that, and they didn't listen to him. So, but I think it did hurt the GI Joe brand in the long run, and with something where, like, it cost them sales of the comic book, which at the time that Cobra Commander was killed off, it was like their best-selling comic book. But no, they decided to bet all their money on that Serpentor horse, and look how that worked out for them. Although Larry did bring back Serpentor in the comics recently, a newer version of him, Serpentor Khan, as he's called now. So a genetically engineered Superman named Khan. Khan! So I don't know if Larry did that on purpose, but I'm sure it was named after Genghis Khan, really, but funny coincidence. So yeah, Shockwave, I definitely give a recommend. He's a really cool figure, and even if you are one of those people who had stopped collecting GI Joes by 1988 or 89, whenever it was that the original Shockwave came out, within those years, go ahead and give this guy a chance. I think you'll find that he's going to look really good on your shelf. So that's pretty much it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do some Batman the Animated Series in a little bit after I take a little bit of a break. And so come back for that. We will see you next time. Bye.